Where does the liberation begin? The origin of woman aspiration seems far removed from our lives' reality. When speaking of woman history, the Western movement may come out to mind. Why? This movement exposed the structural inequality faced by women in particular eras. More important, this movement identified women as a oppressed group, while this movement is distinct from the Philippine women's movement. It is nonetheless part of a large story that shaped the global women agenda today. What is feminism? Feminism is a way of looking at the world through a woman perspective. The previous chapter explained that a woman perspective is socially constructed and based on how society views feminism or womanhood as a whole. Feminism is a concept popularized by the Western society with many feminist issues articulated by Western educated women and even the men. It is deeply rooted in the Western concept of liberal democracy and philosophy of equal rights for all, as defined by thinkers such as Kant and Mill. Western Woman Movement, a brief history. Discussing Western women's movement involves looking at what many feminism historians and theorists call as waves or feminism. There are three distinct waves of feminism in the Western world, each associated to a different school of thought. The first wave is feminism involves the call of women equal rights, focusing on women's right to vote. It's largely rooted in the liberal political through which prioritize the power of reasons and the mind. The next wave, known as the radical feminism, a post of World War II era of feminism when women were already recognized as having distinct biological and need from men, such as a reproductive health and need that arose from being socialized as women. The last wave of feminism is rooted in the recognition of various theories and various modes of being to be truly free from partiality of recognize of intersectional considered women struggle from different parts of the globe, such as that of a Black or Latin woman's to be distinct struggle that are different from women's struggles in the world. The first wave of feminism, women and civil rights. Theoretically roots for the first wave of womanism, liberal feminism. The first wave of women's move characterized by the women's struggle for equality. This phase, which occurred from the latter part of 18th century until the first half of 20th century, was the period when women articulated their equality with men. The development of liberal politics through by philosophers like A.M.L of Russians underscoring the equality rights of all men, but not women, inspired women of craft their own philosophy of equality and women. Woman and the anti-slavery movement. The idea of woman as a property of her husband may explain the strong connection between women liberation movement and anti-slavery movement in the Western world. The beginning of women's movement due as spark from the imposition movement. Various women, often white and with a high social status, often forums and seminars on slavery advocate for the liberation of slaves. However, women were not taken seriously during the discussion, but the rights of slaves. Women had no political voice in this matter during the 1840 World Anti-Slavery Convention in London. Women delegates were even made to listen proceeding behind curtains. Women and right to vote. Women's role in the domestic sphere meant that everyday women were invisible in the public eye. Those incoming prominent figures or loyal feminism were visible were not often given chance to influence a big discussion. These realities pushed women in Western Europe and North America expand their struggle towards their own emancipation.
The second wave of feminism and women's liberation. Women in the Western world eventually earned the right to vote, while more and more gains were identified for women. There were still a large gap between women's and men's freedom. Despite women attaining the right to vote, they were still viewed as second-class citizens. What more of the Black, lesbian, and Latina women? A struggle arose, one that involved marginalized sectors such as Black women, lesbian, and homosexuals, women in developing countries, and other marginalized women. The second wave of feminism is more concerned with the idea of womanhood and the issues that came with the social construction of a woman's role, and therefore her identity. Thus, a deeper understanding of the womanhood, its implication, and the issues of surrounding women emerge. Theoretical roots in the second wave of feminism. Socialist feminism. Socialist feminism was developed after Marxist feminism to address the gap found in Marxist theories. Unlike Marxist feminists, socialist feminists believe that women are oppressed in all aspects of their lives, not only in the economic aspects. Socialist feminist draws a different meaning from the Marxist idea of a women productivity. One's productive activity is based on the sexual division of labor, which is determined by society and human nature. Socialist feminists believe that the women's subjugation is rooted in the concept of having a monogamous family in which women are confined in their homes and are discouraged to participate in a productive labor. Theoretical roots in the second wave of feminism. Radical feminism. The civil rights movement in the U.S. inspired another form of feminism that is grounded on the constructural change. This feminist perspective, known as radical feminism, sought to ensure that women's differences from men were recognized and celebrated. At this point, equality no longer meant sameness, but being different and equally capable and valuable. Radical feminism came about as a reaction to the lack of attention given to sexuality in the women's struggle. Patriarchy as the root of inequality. Many second-wave feminists focus on analyzing the constructural roots of inequality in society.
This generation of feminists believe that women were forced into roles not because of their natural inclination, but because patriarchal systems conditioned them to adopt certain rules. Patriarchy, as the radical feminists described, was maintained through the control of the public sphere of men. The call of affirmative action. The second wave of the women's movement focused on redefining the meaning of women's society by restoring the struggle of genuine gender equality. Affirmative action meant a deliberate preferential option for women's struggles and movement in order to have equal opportunity in certain fields. This move for maternal health was based on the need to counter years of what many consider a preferential option for the male gender in productive work. Other feminism during the second wave. The second wave of feminism began to spread its influence worldwide, although it was criticized for focusing too much in the interest of Western women. Working-class women and third-world women believed that their issues were also determined by the upper classes, as shown by the lack of services that support healthcare and childcare, as well as the lack of awareness on basic rights of marginalized women. The third wave of feminism. The 1990s brought about the recognition of the different oppressions women face around the globe. The rise of communism and the new global order, along with biomedical and technological advances, shaped the issues of this era. The feminist movement focused to include the needs of women from developing countries in light of the effect of globalization and neoliberal economic policies. The idea of the universal women's experience was challenged, and there was a call for a feminism that embraced the plurality of women's experience. This new wave of feminism was deemed more inclusive as voices from post-colony and post-socialist countries were involved in the movement. With these developments, third wave feminism was born. The idea of post-feminism manifested during the third wave of feminism, in which the second wave was assist for purporting a universal feminism that created one truth for all women with one answer for all issues and directing the movement concerns to target the one dominant group, the and Western feminists. Summing up the Western feminist movement. A brief history of the Western feminist movement is presented to show the various strides that women have made in recent history. Various kinds of feminism with different viewpoints and priorities emerge, depending on the needs of women at that time. These movements were created as reaction to historical events or struggles, such as the civil rights movement. Despite this rich diversity, all the exists and pessimism of feminism showed that one thing has been the priority of the movement: uplifting women such that they can fully participate in society as equals with others and removing structural barriers that prevent them from doing so. While much work has yet to be done, it is important to recognize the heroes of the past for what they have achieved to privilege this generation of a better future.